Hello students. So let's read the next problem. The question says, the base of a rectangular box has an area of x squared plus 5x plus 4. What is its length and width? Well, first of all, let's see what are my keywords, right? So the first keyword that I see is rectangular, because that tells me it's a rectangle, right? The next thing that I see is area. So that tells me that this information goes with area, right? And the last one, it's actually, I'm looking for length and width. So I need to know the length of my rectangle, but I also need to know the width of my rectangle. Okay? So let me give you a couple of seconds for you guys to draw a rectangle. Okay, so let's continue. So we do have a box and we're talking about the base. So the base will be this on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and shade it. You guys can do the same thing. You can put pencil, anything that you have available. So that's my base, right? And we're talking about that it has a value. That base is actually x squared plus 5x plus 4. Is that correct? Okay, so what's the next thing that I know? Well, they're asking me to find the length and the width. So for purposes over here, we're gonna say this is the length, right? And the width will be this one over here. Okay, so we have both of them already. So let's put some labels here. This is the length, this is the width. So if you remember the way that we find areas for a rectangle, it's the following formula. Area equals length times width. So it seems to me that we still need to do product, right? So I know the area for my box and my area, and I'm gonna replace this one. The area is x squared plus 5x plus 4. But I do not know the length and the width. So we need to go back and remember that when we factor, it allows me to find two factors, right? So we're gonna do the same method that we have been doing for factoring. So let me give a little bit of time for you guys to draw the x and the table. Let's continue. So the first thing that I do is write the standard form right below my problem, right? So I'm gonna write down ax squared plus bx plus c. Remember, this is going to help us identify A, B, and C. Yes, so we're going to write it down right here on the bottom. So A, B, and C, right? So let's identify A. There's no number for the coefficient of A. So what do I write? I write A1. So A is 1, B is 5, and C is 4, right? So let's see that. This goes together. So that's my C, right? This goes together. That's my B. And of course, the first one goes together. That's my A. Okay, just to help identify A, B, and C, right? So let's write down my numbers on the X. So if you remember, we need to find the product for A times C, which is a 4. Opposite of that, I need to write down the value for the B, which is a 5. And on the lower, I write down the coefficients, right? Which are 1 on these cases, right? Once I do that, I'm going to go and move to my table because now I know that I need to find the product of 4 and I also need to find the sum of 5. Okay, so let's write down over here, this is my sum and this is the product. Okay, so let's start with the very first factors for 4. So since I need a positive number, well, I do know that I need to multiply 1 times 4 and it gives me a 4. But remember that also the negatives, when you multiply two negatives, you also get a positive 4. After 1 comes 2, so we're going to say 2 times 2 gives me 4. Very good. And then you also need to remember that negative 2 times negative 2 gives me also a positive 4. So I know I'm done because 2 and 2 are right next to each other. So we're done with the factors for my product of 4. Let's move on to the sum. So in the sum, I am going to add 1 plus 4 and I get a 5. And I hope you say bingo. Yes, it seems to me that that's my answer, but just to check, let's go to the next ones. Negative 1 plus negative 4, I get a negative 5. 2 plus 2 gives me a 4. And negative 2 plus negative 2, well, I get a negative 4. So, yes, it seems to me that we got the right factors, right? So, my factors that I was looking for a positive 4. I was looking for a positive 5. So, those are my two answers that I was looking for. So, I'm going to come back to my x and I'm going to write down those numbers here. So, I'm going to place a 1 on the first one, place a 4 on the second section, right? And do I need to simplify any of the numbers? It doesn't seem like it, right? So remember that these are the numbers that I found to be my answers. These are the factors that I'm going to use, right? So those are the ones that I put right there. That's my 1 and that's my 4. Okay? So if you remember, now I need to decide who's going to be my x. This one carries the x, right? And now I know that this is where my factors are going to be. So let's see if we can write them down. So my first factor is going to be 1x plus 1. Second factor will be 1x plus 4. And yes, we can rewrite them without the coefficient 1. So it's x plus 1 and x plus 4. And if you notice, there is one answer that matches that. Is that correct? Yes, it will be your answer choice, letter B for that. So if you want to, okay, and I'll leave it up to you, you can actually multiply those two factors, okay? These are my factors that I found. I can multiply my factors using the box to double check that I actually get x squared plus 5x plus 4.